Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I'm Dr. Amanda Landis-Hanna, one of the co-hosts of the Veterinary Business Podcast. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing, finance, leadership, law, HR, and today, AI. Whether you're a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, practice manager, or a student studying to be in the veterinary field, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Each listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. You can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, YouTube Music, Spotify, and other popular podcast platforms. Today, my guest is Dr. Karen Bolten. She is also known as the business veterinarian. And today we will be discussing the AI wake-up call VetMed can't afford to miss. Thank you so much for joining me today, Karen.
Thank you for having me.
Before we launch in, we've got some really great questions today, but can you give me just a brief intro to you? How did you get into veterinary medicine? How did you get into AI?
I know we talked before this about me having problems being brief, and that was a very loaded question right there. So very briefly, I am a veterinarian. I have an MBA as well. I initially started on the equine side of the field, and I accidentally fell into business ownership at the beginning of my career. Had no interest in being a business owner, and as I owned my business, I just got more interested in the business side and less interested in being on call 24/7 and awake all the time. And that's when I decided to do my MBA. But I've always been a tech person. I don't know how much we will get into this, but my very first foray into tech things was when I was 9. I learned how to build websites, and this is the geekiest of the geeky things I've done. My first website was a sim barn where we had, and I say we because this was a community. We had fake horses, and we competed with our fake horses. And in hindsight, I was committing intellectual property theft. But I had some really good graphics, though. I will say that.
We're less than 10 years old. It can't count, right?
Yeah, but yeah, that was the beginning of like the internet, though. So my tech stuff goes way back, but I've kind of stayed up with it at every new development since then. I've done websites in high school and in undergrad and vet school, and through the different businesses I've been in since I graduated. And then I feel old saying this, but Facebook started my first year of vet school. So wasn't a thing before vet school. But of course, once I got out into practice,
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah,
it just means you have more experience in the industry. That's what that means.
That's true. But once I got into practice, I made sure I got us on Facebook, and then, Instagram wasn't a thing yet, but then Instagram was a thing. And then I got us on Instagram. And so I've stayed with the social media. And then when AI came out, oh man, that was so exciting. So that's how I've gotten into AI, but I've always been a geek.
Excellent. Well, we're going to get to that point, but I do know that you kind of launched during the big recession period. You briefly touched on that. Give me a little bit more. How did that period of the recession really impact you in your career?
Yes. So it was definitely a hard time to start out. Horses are obviously luxury animals, and it is hard to find a job working on luxury animals when no one has any money. And I graduated in 2009. I did an internship at an academic institution, and then I was looking for a job in 2010. And I will just never forget that I went on to AAEP's website, which is where the main place at that point, because once again, social media was barely a thing. But that's where you look to find a job. And there were 8 jobs listed in equine practice in the entire country. 8. And So that was the job market I was getting into. And my first job out, when I finally did find a job, it's embarrassing to say, but I'm lucky I even found a job. Otherwise, I would have been making no money. But I was making something that started with a 3 and contained 5 numbers. But if I hadn't accepted that, I would have had $0. So it was an extremely hard job market. And I just remember that the big practices were firing equine vets at that point because there was no market for horses. I also come from a lower middle income background too, where I had a single mother. I was an only child. I was just raised to be self-sufficient. So when I was thrown into this position, it was a satellite practice. I was literally the only employee, and I was kind of like, here you go. Good luck. Make this a thing.
Oh, wow.
So it was just starting out. The owner at that point had just bought the phone number and the client list from someone who was leaving the area, and it was kind of just all thrown onto me. And not the ideal. It was not how I would imagine the ideal HR training to be. But I think a lot of us have come into the field that way.
Right.
And so it was a lot of cold calls. I just worked myself to death. And the more I thought about just this podcast, which I was just telling you, I started thinking about this, like this was almost like a break-even analysis. If you have some background in finance or accounting, or have done some business things. When I first started out, I had too much time on my hands, and I was just trained to work. Like I had no money personally. The practice had no money, but I had time. So I could just work. And then eventually I had too many clients. I had no time. I had hired on a part-time vet. And then eventually, after I bought the practice, I had hired a full-time vet. And there was no time. I was killing myself. And I started thinking all of a sudden, like, oh, this is a break-even analysis. And somewhere in the middle there was the break-even point.
Right.
And somewhere there is when I needed to have figured something out, whereas I was not killing myself. And not only was I killing myself, but at the end of everything, when I looked back, the money didn't make up for the fact that I was killing myself. I mean, I got stomach ulcers. Like I was not mentally well for a lot of that long. I think many of us are still not mentally well, but
it's We're working on it. This is Mental Health Month, so let's embrace that.
Good to know. Oh, we're at the beginning of it. That's good. Still time. But I think when I was thinking of this from a break-even analysis perspective, it's almost like I needed to have figured that out before that break-even point and figured out how to have made things more efficient before I hit that point. Because once you hit that point, you're overwhelmed, you're tired. You don't have time to do any of the figuring out because it's like the work's just too much at that point. So I had a bit of an epiphany as I was working on what I was going to talk about for this. So thank you.
Awesome.
But I think that's also why it's important from the perspective of I am worried about the economy coming up. It seems a little bit suspiciously, I don't want to say like what I graduated in, but there's a lot of talk. I looked up some numbers about some of the big financial management firms about their recession probability statistics, and JP Morgan is thinking it's about a 60% probability, and Goldman Sachs has us at about a 45% probability of recession right now. And if we go into a recession, hopefully it won't be as bad as when I graduate, but people are saying some scary things. So it's just better to be prepared.
Karen, thanks so much for sharing those thoughts with us. Certainly right now is a big change in our economics here in the States with a lot of uncertainty. But throughout the world, we do know that we've definitely had some changes in economics all over. A large piece of that being computers and AI and bringing computers and technology into veterinary medicine. From that time when you were excessively stressed and still in practice to the time where we are now, tell me about that transition. Tell me about the role that computer and technology and AI has had to play in your journey.
Yeah, so it's definitely different now than it was back then. Like I mentioned before, like social media was barely a thing back then. Smartphones, I remember when I first started, I didn't even want to get a smartphone, and then I got a smartphone. But it has certainly changed a lot. We have so much more access now than to all the information than we did back then. So it's a big difference. But I remember after I sold my practice, the first things one of the big realizations I had in hindsight after I sold my practice that I wish I would have had while I owned my practice. Um, and this is from the perspective of suddenly I had time to think about things. Whereas when I was in the midst of owning my practice, it's the whole overwhelm. Like you're in it. You don't have time. At least I didn't have time in the situation I was in to sit down and think about things, which um, stems from a lot of things. Just the way the business was being run, my lack of knowledge, and more. But one of the first realizations that I had when I had time to sit down and think was that I was paying too much for human labor when I could have been paying for computers to do the same jobs. So, for instance, some of the earlier software that was available back then, like we had practice management software, certainly not AI back then, but appointment reminders, for instance. So I was having my practice manager slash assistant call people to remind them of their appointments and confirm them. And at that point, there were services that were becoming available for that. But I think just coming from a background where it's like, money's tight and it's always work harder because you don't have any money and therefore you don't have the money to pay for this stuff.
Right.
Like when I added up the annual cost of these things, it just seemed like so much. And now it's like, oh my gosh, the cost of those versus the cost of a person per hour to do the same job, a person is so much more expensive. I mean, the math is not even comparable. And computers, for the most part, as long as they're doing their job correctly, um, they're going to be more efficient. They make less mistakes. They don't tend to get tired. I mean, I'm exhausted by the end of the day. I mean, obviously there's exceptions to all these rules, but I think one of my biggest regrets from the management perspective in terms of things like that is I wish I would have picked some of those softwares and spent my money on that because I just didn't understand the math because it just it I think just because we were just used to doing it the same way the whole time, and it just didn't make sense then. But the funny thing is now these services do so much more than just that. They're not just making appointment reminders, they're literally talking to your clients. So they're taking so many more things off of the plates of your receptionists and your techs and your doctors. And I mean, they're paying for themselves even better now. So that was a very hard mentality for me to overcome. And I having talked to quite a few other vets who come from similar backgrounds to me, I know I'm not the only other one that it's hard to like let go of those reins when you're used to working like that for so long. But eventually you have to let it go and realize that there are other ways to do things that are actually better for your company too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now that brings me to a potential ethical question, though.
Mhm.
What are the ethics of computers doing the jobs that humans used to do? What are the ethical risks of adopting AI in a practice or for a practice manager?
Yeah, so this has been a journey of learning for me. And I think I kind of used to understand things on a more superficial level, and I'm learning things deeper. And I know goes even farther, even more deeply than what I know at this point. You can kind of get on the conspiracy level of things, but maybe that's too deep. But I used to kind of think of like the data privacy side of things, which is 100% a thing. And I have so many rabbit holes that I go into with all the AI stuff, but one of my recent rabbit holes have been looking at all the privacy policies, especially for looking at the AI scribes this week, and the privacy policies vary vastly about what data they use, how long they keep it, how they use it, whether you can opt out or not. So that's where some of the privacy things come into the mix. What are they doing with your patient's data? What are they doing with your data? Because if you're using things that are recording your information in the room, it's not just your patients, it's you too. And some of the ones that I've read have made me rather uncomfortable. And especially when I look at all of the privacy policies I've seen, I'm realizing that some of these are exceptions to the rules, and like not everyone is like using your data. So this is where the fine print matters. Please read your contracts. So data privacy is definitely a really important thing right now. The other important thing to know in conjunction with that, especially if you're in the US and probably other countries as well, the regulations in the US are, I don't even know if loose is the right term. They're almost non-existent right now when it comes to AI. So in the EU, data privacy in general is better. I know Canada is a little bit better. There's a few other outlying countries that are better than the US. But when it comes to AI, I just kind of feel like it's the Wild West right now. So it's really important that you take the responsibility to read what you're getting into. But when it gets to a deeper level, you start getting into how these models are built. And once I started learning this is when I think I really started getting scared. So it's a little bit complicated about how the models are built themselves. But the most important thing to know is it's the garbage in, garbage out theory. Okay. What are they putting into these models? What data is being used to train them? Are they using data from very specific communities? And I think for us, if we're extrapolating from some of the bias research that's happening in human medicine, when they're talking about there's a lot of problems in human medicine with racial bias and socioeconomic bias. And I went through a class where it was a human class, and they were thinking about all this, and I'm just thinking on our side, like, we have even more. We have so many different species. Even within our single species, we have different sizes, different, like, you think about like X-rays, you have brachycephalic and oh my gosh, I'm going to like butcher that word. I'm a vet, I swear. Dolichocephalic. I mean, you have so many different sizes and shapes and conformations, and like the bias is unreal. So it's important to know like what data is going in so that you know what you're working with on the other side. And part of the problem with that is that these are commercial models for the most part. These are not academic institutions, which is a little bit different than like all of our other sciences we're used to working with right now, where they're more transparent about what they're putting into these models. It's all very complicated right now, but the moral of the story is that it's still our responsibility as practitioners, as other veterinary professionals. We have to understand what we're using, because we need to protect ourselves and we need to protect our patients. And there's definitely ways that you can evaluate the models if you know what you're looking for.
Excellent. So you've actually built a searchable AI tool directory for VetMed. So obviously you've already given this a lot of thoughts, and I'm going to ride off your coattails, and I want to take a look, say for instance, at this AI tool directory, and see what you've already found, because the devil's in the details, like you said. What kind of tools are out there right now, and are there ways to integrate them without getting overwhelmed? How can practice owners ride your coattails the same way I'm going to?
Yes, so this has been an absolutely fascinating project. I'm not going to lie. It has been, oh my gosh, the coolest things that this field is doing. So I'm going to start with kind of the more commonplace things. And I'm telling you, the production medicine is where it's really getting interesting. And that's probably the stuff that most of us are probably knowing the least about. But I definitely I hope we have enough time to get into a few of those. But I'm going to start with, I think, what all of us can use. I'm going to mention maybe a few small animal things and then the production animal things. And I'm very sad that I'm having a hard time finding some of the equine AI stuff. I'm trying, but I think our equine people, we're lagging behind a little bit. So I'm sad about
that. Okay. If you're an equine vet utilizing some AI, reach out.
Send it to me. Yes.
Yeah, reach out to Karen or reach out to our podcast at veterinarybusinessinstitute.com, and we can have just an equine AI type of, well, not artificial insemination AI, but the other kind of AI. The
but
type
also
of AI we're talking about,
production
right?
or reproduction related, because there are some reproduction AI AIs.
That's so interesting. Okay, you got it. I'll
Yes.
be quiet so you can tell me all about it.
See, I haven't trained myself to actually like ask for these things, but I do have a submission button on my website where you can submit these things. I'm trying to crowdsource things as much as I can. I'm just trying to make it a resource that where people can go and find things if they're interested. So some of the more commonplace tools that I think everyone can use in practice. So I personally have just started using an AI scribe software. And my first foray into ChatGPT was dictating my medical records into a SOAP format that I figured out, got it how to work, figured out how to make it work, give me a good SOAP output. The ambient AI scribes are basically listening to you in the room. And then they're putting it not only in a SOAP format, but they're helping you with making your discharges. It's a whole different ballgame. I'm a big fan. I really like them. I have ADHD. I struggle with my records. I know I'm not alone because I'm in an ADHD vet group, and there's a lot. The number of people in that group is very high, and records are very difficult for us. And it has helped my cognitive fatigue quite a bit during the day. I'm getting through records faster, and there's been a lot of other cool benefits that I won't get into right now. Otherwise, I'll get lost. But the AI scribes, I've really liked. I do think that has been a very worthwhile change in my life. There's plenty of diagnostic tools that many of us are already using that do have AI in them. Some of our blood work machines and urinalysis machines have them in. Some of our microscopes. There's some diagnostics microscopes that you can put the image in there, send it off, have them tell you what's wrong. I don't want to get too much into actual brand names. I don't know if that's okay or not, but there's a few different products out there for that you may already be using, which I honestly did not know that I was already using those, and they had AI. Then there's plenty of client communication tools also that have AI in there those are the ones where you can take the work off of your receptionist, and chat bots, scheduling tools, things like that, where you can save money on paying humans, and also they might not have to deal with clients so much, which is a win-win for everyone. So on the patient monitoring side for small animal, you have some vital monitoring devices that I think they're using, infrared, maybe, don't quote me on that, but they're able to monitor from far away. It's almost like a little machine that can monitor their heart rate and their respiration from far away. I'd love to be able to try that out. That looks really cool. And then you all
remember mine, Karen, that I work with Radar and my Radar AI as well.
Well, you're next on my list underneath wearables.
Next on your list. Okay,
yes.
Never mind. I'll let you talk about me instead of me talk about me.
Yeah, but I will probably butcher all the mechanics behind it because I'm good at my categories, but not necessarily describing them. So you're underneath the wearable section, but also vital monitoring. I'm struggling on all of my categories because it's also complex. But so it's a wearable collar. Do you want to say a little blurb about yours?
Oh, sure. So mine's actually a wearable sensor. It doesn't have to be worn, though. It can be,
okay.
It can be in a wand. It can be completely, it doesn't have to.
Did you say a wand? Like a magic wand?
Like a magic wand. It's like
I'm into this.
my magic wand, in fact. So my sensor utilizes radar technology in addition to accelerometry and a gyroscope to identify patients in 3D, as well as to identify their blood pressure, heart rate variability, and respiratory rate. And I don't have to touch a patient, and it's designed to go home with the client. So now we can get at home vitals on our patients.
You need to tell me more about this afterwards.
AI technology.
Because I have a personal dog that I need a blood pressure on that I will literally never get a blood pressure. One thing that's important for me as I'm doing this is whenever there's studies attached to these, I am trying to attach the peer-reviewed studies. So there's some that are heavy on the studies. There's some that have no studies. So I am attaching studies whenever I can find them too. And I believe Voice has a study as well. So that's good to know as well. Okay, on the large animal side. So large animal, and like I said, this is mainly on the production animal side. There's a lot of really cool things going on, and I would say for the most part, a lot of the large animal tools are what I can best describe as multimodal monitors. They're looking at their visual monitors, their audio. They're looking at a ton of different things and interpreting them via AI. A lot of them are being used in cattle and swine and poultry and fish. There's a ton of aquaculture things going on. There's ones that actually ID fish, like they ID fish. How cool is that? Um, on the cattle side, you have wearables for them as well. You have wearables that not only detect their health, but also detecting signs of estrus. I think it's when like they're starting to do mounting behavior. Once again, don't quote me on that, but there's collars that are looking for that as well. For pigs, there's an audio service that is looking for coughing to try to detect respiratory issues early, which is kind of cool. But my favorite one, like, I don't know, someone's gonna have to try really hard to surpass this one. There's AI for bees. There's a smart,
Can't wait to
yes,
hear about this.
there's a smart hive for bees. And I try to talk one of my friends into this that has bees, but it's a huge commercial thing. But it's monitoring them for health. It helps treat them for mites. I'm scared of bugs because I was kind of into this, and it says it's like hands off, and I was like, that's kind of cool. But they're only like leasing them out to commercial people though. But maybe I don't know. Maybe eventually it'll be smaller things. But AI for bees, how freaking cool is that?
That is
So.
cool.
So like the more I got into this, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the production medicine. Like, I mean, not that the small animal side is not, we're not behind, but it's the production. I assume there's probably a little bit of more of a financial incentive there to get things right. But I think probably we can extrapolate things from all of these species into each other too. So, and that's what I'm trying to do on my other database is I'm trying to hoard all of the AI vet papers that I can find so that if people are interested, they can find things more easily.
Thank you so much for doing that. That's not only a huge undertaking, but an incredibly valuable resource. I can't wait to take a look through. I'm specifically going to be looking for the AI for bees because I think that that's really interesting. But even if I'm in practice and I have a scribe tool and I have a radiography review tool, if I have all these tools, but my team either doesn't understand them or doesn't buy into them, it's going to be really hard. So, how would you suggest helping your team get on board with these? How do you suggest making shifts in the practice in order to make the adoption of these pieces of technology flow a little bit more seamlessly?
Yeah, so I number one, I do have I found a really nice review paper. I don't know, several months ago from the human side that actually pulls from all of the research on this topic. But I'm also going through this right now. So I'm doing relief long term at a practice, and like I said, I just started using the AI scribe software, and I was the first one there. And I'm also witnessing this in person right now, and it's been interesting. So what I'm dealing with in person is it's not even the pushback. It's just that it's kind of new. I think some of my assumptions were going to be that maybe the younger people were going to be more on board. And it's not that they're not, but I think my assumption was that they were going to be familiar with a lot of this stuff and they're not. And that was surprising to me. So it's been interesting to live through this, even though I kind of knew some of the stuff already. So I found a really, really good article that went through all the different issues and how to overcome them. So probably the biggest issue that, this is much easier said than done, is this is a cultural shift. And you really have to lay the groundwork for it before you make that shift if you want it to work well. So it's kind of like if you can just go in the past for a while and fix your culture and then do it, I obviously that's not the situation for most people. But basically, ideally, you want to go into doing these things with the culture of open-mindedness, technology acceptance, and continuous learning. So that's the best way to go into these sort of shifts. But you can always start now. Let's say you have a practice where it's like maybe that's not how the practice is. You can always start now with that. So, and I think as we go into the future, that's probably a good mindset in general. But one of the other really important things is communication amongst the team and between not only team members, but leadership. So leadership is the one who is really setting that culture. And I think all of us have worked in practices where there's a stated culture and then there's what you're seeing.
Right.
And you need leadership to really be emulating what they want to be happening. So if they want to be technologically innovative, they also need to be practicing that themselves. But they also need to be talking to their employees and asking their employees, like, how do you feel? Like, not only before you do this, but after you do this, you need to be following up after you start these activities, especially if people are feeling uncomfortable after you implement. You need to be managing that as it's happening. And then the other big issue is skill gaps. So there's a lot of people who have no clue how to do anything AI, anything technology. And I see a variety of that in person myself. And you have to take the time, like any other skill in a medical clinic, to train them. And you have to take the time to keep them up on the training. So a lot of the technology have onboarding programs, and you need to take advantage of those. But you need to also put the time and the money into that. And that's obviously hard to do when there's not a lot of time or money to go around in general, but these things are all going to work better if you do that. And then you need to make sure you have rules for how you're going to be using these AI services too, and how are you're going to be implementing them ethically, and how are you going to be following up on their usage.
That's really great. I love that concept of kind of start where you are. Ideally, you've already set yourself up for success, but if you haven't, today is the day to start sort of setting yourself up for success. As we wrap up, what are your final takeaways for clinic owners or managers who want to sort of future-proof their practice with AI?
So I think the biggest one, and I kind of touched on the point that I did not take the time to do this when I was an owner. You have to set aside time to find solutions. And I'm hoping that the resource that I made will help people, because I kept having people ask me, what sort of things were available. And I literally had one of the note things on my phone, on my one of the iNotes. And then I was like, oh no, I just need to put this somewhere. So I'm hoping that will be a faster source for people to find information and help evaluate. But like any other thing in your business, you need to set aside time to actually work on your business. And you have to purposely do that. And you have to purposely schedule that. Otherwise, it's going to get away from you. Like any other medical tool, you need to learn how to use it. So if you have an ultrasound that you just got, you hopefully will be learning how to use that ultrasound. Otherwise, it's not going to be very helpful if you have an ultrasound and you don't know how to ultrasound things. The AI tools are no different. Okay. You need to be responsible for evaluating these tools, just like any other medical product. There are consequences to not doing that, and it can vary from the privacy issues all the way to perhaps you are using let's just say a radiography tool that has not been trained very well, but you don't know that because you haven't looked into it. And that's honestly, it's kind of it's a worry right now because of the regulations side of things. But just to be honest, you have to take your own responsibility and look at these things. And then the biggest thing is just start small. Like what is your biggest problem? Find a tool to deal with that. For me, it was medical records. And that has made a huge impact on my life.
That's really great. Again, thank you so much for developing this tool. Where can people find this tool to check it out?
Yeah, so it's on my website, thebusinessvet.com, and you can just go to thebusinessvet.com/AI, and that'll take you to my AI page.
Excellent, excellent. And then Karen, for people that want to look you up, say for instance, on your LinkedIn, is your LinkedIn just your name?
Yeah, so I'm at The Business Vet on just about all the major social media platforms.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. I know my listeners are really going to be interested in learning more. So today, thank you so much, Karen, for joining us and talking with us about this very interesting topic. About this wake up call VetMed is having with AI. I also want to take a moment to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, kindly share it with your colleagues and friends on social media. Also, please don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews will help other doctors and practice owners find us. And again, if you're an equine vet utilizing AI, please reach out to us on the podcast, reach out to Karen, because we are really interested in what's going on in your neck of the woods. So until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents. Wishing you all an amazing week ahead. Thanks so much.